Good morning, everybody. It's Christian from Serene Education with the 4 majors notes update for the 27th of July 2012. Hi guys, hope you had a fantastic day yesterday. I've noticed we saw a lot of movement yesterday on the market. The past 2 days in particular, we had on Tuesday we had a bullish engulfing candle for the pair on the daily, and yesterday's analysis taking us, or trading taking us well above that 12,200 on a daily, which happened to be this prior consolidation area here. And price is now trading into that, or to the underside, between the 12,300 and 12,3500, which happens to be that price support and resistance on our major time frame. A knee-jerk reaction is what I think is happening at the moment now. A lot of good news that came out on the market, especially after the speaking in Europe. But you can see the overall trend. The CTC is still telling us that we should be looking for negative sentiment. We do have a blue candle on our daily, or arrow, sorry, apologies. We do have a blue arrow on our strategy template telling us heads up we could see potential change in market sentiment. However, we're still trading below this major support and resistance level here at the 12,3500. As long as it maintains below that, we're still trading below a price support and resistance level, a major one, and sentiment is still looking genuinely negative. The 20-period moving average has been, or this morning on the Asian session, has been penetrated. We are seeing a slightly trading higher, very small trading range nonetheless as we go into the European session. But you can see quite clearly yesterday we saw price rallying into that 12,3500 but pulling back at the close of the US session. It's imperative that if this is to remain as still as positive sentiment build up, we do need to see this 12,3500 being breached quite soon. If we can do that and get above this area here, then ultimately we could see price moving higher, and we could see 12,700 yet again being targeted. You can see over the past couple of months we have seen price testing this area. So until such time this price is broken through 12,3500, I'm still looking for this to be potentially bearish, because we've had resistance on 2 occasions once we've broken through this area recently through July, just over here on the 10th, and a lot of indecision candles over here through the 18th and 19th leading up to the 20th sell-off. So imperative, anybody looking for a trade, it would be important to see a break and close higher than 12,3500. Otherwise we could see price just failing at this level yet again, and we could see price moving excuse me, back down to all these lows, particularly back towards the 12,200 mark, and ultimately back down towards this the 12,500 mark, which we've just come from. Having a look at the 4-hour chart, you can quite clearly see these areas of price support and resistance here, and you can see that 12,3500, a noticeable area we've seen consolidation intraday. 4-hour chart back here in early June, that bounce after that huge sell-off in the market, and then you can see quite clearly here in July breaking below that and trading lower. Yes, we've had pullbacks, but we're still trading below that range. Most importantly, we're still below the CTC signals, which is the histogram on the other side, telling us that even though we're seeing this positive buying sentiment coming through on our intraday charts, you can see it's still negative across the board. Okay, it's only once we start trading through the institution area, above the institution moving average, do we start seeing price really telling us that we should be looking for buying sentiment. But overall on the daily we could still see that that sentiment is still genuine negative. In that case, we know that 12,700 is also a major support and resistance level. You can quite clearly see, even though we saw buying and trading above the institution moving average on this time frame, the sentiment was still into major resistance in the past, and you can see price reverted to the downside. So for this to be potentially long-term positive, or the start of a long-term trade, we would need to see price trading above at least at 12,400, well 1235 particularly, but above the 12,400 to get us above the institution. Then that would definitely confirm that we should be looking for further sentiment to the upside, and then we can actually profit off from it. We don't want to be speculative in this case, because as long as it's trading still below that major support and resistance level, I think this is just much a knee-jerk reaction to news coming out from Draghi in particular, saying they'll do everything to help Eurozone. Yes, great, fantastic, but there still remains a lot of work to be done in Europe, and that's not going to happen overnight. Spain is still a huge issue at the moment now. There's talk that we could see further bailout, not more loans as they classified, but more bailout, definite bailouts. It's looking really bleak in Spain, and Spain is far a major problem compared to Greece. Greece is nothing compared to what we're going to likely see from Spain. So yeah, we're not out of the woods yet, and I don't want to be speculative, so get me above this 12,3500, then we can start talking. Until then, I'm still looking negative. Moving on to sterling, good old cable. You can see quite clearly the same effect that we had yesterday. A lot of selling after two very indecisive candles. They are spinning tops, very negative candles. Well, indecisive candles. Apologies, they're not negative candles. They're just indecisive, and you've got to see a decision. And they were trading below the 23.6 here from the. If you take the Fib retracement area from the high that we saw in May down to those lows in early June, you can see price has been pulling it back, and you can see it's been consolidating under the most important one of here, the institutional moving average, roughly around the 15,700 mark, which is a very strong support and resistance level for this pair over the past couple months. So price needs to be trading above that, and you can see we've been rallying into these points over the past couple of months. However, we've been actually failing. Price has failed to actually grab the bull by the horns and actually to push the momentum higher because of this buying sentiment. Buying into it, a lot of indecision, then price moving lower. Buying into it, indecision, moving lower. Buying into it, bearish engulfing, moving lower. Now we're buying yet again into it, and we've seen this consolidation in Asia, but we're still not above this area here. Ideally, we could see potentially price moving higher over the next day or so into here, but yesterday's candle you quite clearly see moving higher into that area range. However, by the close of the US session last night, price moving and closing lower. Not lower than the 38.2 though, which is a good sign, because now you could see on the past couple of days, as price has been trading above it, we've seen further attempts of these highs, but we could see that. I'm not saying you can't trade this intraday. However, you have to be aware of that major resistance level above us. If you are trading intraday, that's got to be your target. You're not going to be taking profit or 50% etc. from this and then letting it run. Rather take full value. That'll be your target intraday from where you are now. As long as it trades above the 38.2, above the 15,6,500, that's where you should be targeting, 15.75. And if it does present itself and we see further upside movement this morning, take it, because I feel that we could see further resistance level here for price to pull back. For all you long-term traders, have to see price breaking above this. We would have missed a move now if you haven't fully traded this. Rather stay on the side, wait for price to actually generate. If this is a genuine upside movement or buying sentiment, then we want to see price trading above that. Get above 1575, 15800 in particular. We're well above the institution moving average, and as long as by then, if it's trading above the institution moving average, then we're going to see that sentiment doing generally looking topside favorite, and then we could target the 61.8, 78.6, and ultimately those highs we saw in the first part of May. But until then, still trading below it. In my eyes, still looking negative, because my CTC tells me that sentiment is still generally looking negative. So I'm standing aside until next time we actually get a clear result. If not, we see bearish sentiment, then I'll be looking to trade on the downside, catching these trades to the downside as we find further resistance here. So I'm remaining on the fence on this one. I'm not trading this particular pair until we get a confirmation break higher or bearish engulfing at a resistance level to see if we can trade to the downside for the remainder of this week. On to Swiss franc. Let's have a look at the weekly. A lot of bearish sentiment this week. Heading into Thursday, you can quite clearly see we've had upside movement. I've always said that ultimately our target would be long term for this pair, the 1,000 mark, and you can quite clearly see that we've headed into it. We haven't quite got there yet, but you can see that the sentiment as we head into it starts to pull back, because that's going to be a major support and resistance level on our weekly, which coincides quite nicely with the institution moving average. Quite clearly see the further out I zoom out, you can see the price over since 2010, 2009 in particular, October, November, December 2009, we had a bit of support through this pair. 2010, late 2010, we had resistance, and then recently we are now looking at that as a potential target long term, and sure enough on our weekly we've seen price heading into that direction, swinging higher, all the moving average bar the institution, below price, and most importantly our CTC telling us this was genuine upside movement. So if we look at the daily for this pair, you would notice the 1000 or made a note of that 1000 mark as a long-term support or resistance target for this pair. There we go. I just want to make sure I get this right for you guys so you can see it clearly. There we go. Change that, make it nice and thick, and you can quite clearly see a lot of hesitation here through October, through parts of October or parts of 2010, and sure enough people have been looking at it as a potential target. As they've reached or moved into that target area, they've started to take profit, and sure enough we've seen this pullback. You can see the swing highs dictating upside movement. Up until yesterday, we were trading above the 20-period moving average, so all the moving averages below price acting as support for this pair. And most importantly, our CTC was giving us an all signal buy, though. Even though we had pullbacks, it was still telling us the sentiment was still very genuine indeed. So where now for this price? You can quite clearly see, though, price yesterday moving back towards a previous support and resistance level of this pair, and that was prior resistance and then support through this area here. So roughly around the 97500 mark. If I can just find it, 97500. Yep, you can see that price has actually found a support and resistance level, and you can see on the Asian session this morning, price heading into it quite strongly. But you would obviously have to see a major break below this to be confirmed a genuine looking negative long term. And ultimately, if you're going to be doing that, you're going to be seeing price moving into this range now, where we have the upside trend. So look at the overall movement for this pair. If you had to take the lows here, the projection figures from the lows here in May to the high that we saw just before the start of June, pull it back to those lows we saw through June, you can see quite clearly that the fib extensions or projection levels, you can see 61.8 here at the 98, 70 or 80 mark, clear resistance for a number of days, and the breakout and moving higher. That's area at the 1000 there would probably generally be roughly around the 78.6 mark, if I'm not mistaken. You put that in, you can quite clearly see at 1000, 78.6 was our target, and we've seen price moving back. So I feel if we see price breaking below this price support and resistance level quite clearly here at 975, and it stays below the 50%, then obviously we can see price move towards that area here at 970, which coincides quite nicely with the 38.2. Get below that, then we should be seeing price testing the 23.6, which is 960, and barring we get below that, then ultimately price is going to move back 100% towards these price support and resistance levels here at 940, which will coincide nicely with the institution moving average coming from the bottom. But you can quite clearly see on our daily, the institution moving average still clearly below price here and supporting it long term, and hence the reason why the CTC is still giving us that buy signal. So the 4-hour chart quite clearly showing us resistance now, the past couple of hours, 12 hours at the underside of the 38.2. Here we go, just move, sorry, the 50% line, apologies. You can see the institution below us heading at roughly around the 970 mark. Failure here would, you can see quite clearly we have two parts of our 4-part strategy, only 2 parts, the red arrow and the red candle. However, our CTC on the other side still remains blue. So you can quite clearly see here, I still do not have all 4 parts of my 4-hour telling me I have a true sell signal. And you can see the upside trend here. So if I'd be selling, I could potentially be selling into a potential support area here at the 970, and so that would just bode suicide, because I would not be making any clear returns here without risking a hell of a lot of my on this particular trade. So I'd rather just stand aside, give me a clear break, close below 970 before I think of trading this long term to 960 and below. Last pair of the day is US dollar Japanese yen. Let's have a look at the weekly. You can see a lot of bearish sentiment heading into this week. However, you can see consolidation taking place. This primarily after we've seen price pulling back over the past as we head into a major support resistance level. You can quite clearly see from the lows here in February all the way to this extension to the upside here through latter part of March. You can see that price has been pulling back since we've hit into that 8400 mark, and then moving lower. You can see that we've broken through the 80% or 80 line here, which happens to be our major support and resistance level on our weekly and monthly target charts. And if I just make it nice and thick, you can quite clearly see how we've seen price trading at the underside of that level. So daily looking exactly the same. If you take the lows here in February to the high here, so you take the low here in February to the high that we saw in March, and you pull that pull back, you can see that the 61.8 has been breached, and we've seen price moving lower now towards the 78.6 retracement area, which is here. But quite clearly 7800 we have a major support and resistance level, clearly because we've seen price reverting or finding a lot of contact at this area over a long period of time. So you can quite clearly see as we've moved lower, that would be a potential long-term target for the pair as we broke below the 80 mark, and 61.8 here at 7900. So as we head into here, you can see in the indecision candle a couple of days ago, followed by yesterday's very small trading range as we head into the 78. So now psychologically they know this is a major support and resistance level, and we've had the bounce back to the upside because of that. Overall sentiment still looks negative as we move lower. Yes, we've had a consolidated bounce, but you can see the sentiment here on the CTC strategy still telling us we're looking for negative sentiment. So a break and close lower than 78 would definitely see further extensions to the downside. The longer she trades above 78, the more likely is we're going to see confirmation pullbacks, and that pullback could potentially see price rising higher towards or back towards that 7900 mark, which happens to be the 61.8 area. The institution is still above price, so we know that sentiment long term is still negative. As long as we trade below the institution moving average, we are still looking for further sentiment to the downside. We are going to see consolidation, potential for consolidative trading, because we are now just bounced off a potential long-term support and resistance level here at 78. The 80 mark is still that long-term support and resistance level above us. So you can see before here in June we saw a bounce, and we could see price targeting the 7900. However, if we do see sentiment failing to move higher, and we see a bearish engulfing closing lower than 78, then ultimately we should be looking for further negative sentiment. So any intraday traders, look to see if we can build momentum through the day, and if that's the case, then we should be targeting the 7900. If we don't see bullish engulfing candle here, a nice candle telling us that we should be looking for upside or buying sentiment building nice support here, then ultimately we're going to see a revert to the downside, and a close below the 7800 here would definitely generally look for further sentiment to the downside towards the 7600 long term. That's it for today for the trading analysis. Please look at the news to see if there's anything out there that's going to reflect or make any or actually reflect on the trading of that particular pair that you're looking at to trade. Please ensure that you follow the right money management rules when you are trading. It's imperative to get that right. You might have the best strategy in the world, but if you don't back it up with a very strong money management rule, then you're obviously going to be failing, guaranteed. Please ensure if you are trading this particular strategy template, any of our students out there, please ensure that you follow the rules of the strategy template, otherwise it will not work. And other than that, please ensure that you follow the guidelines set, and just keep it simple, guys. It's imperative that you just keep it as simple as possible. Don't over analyze. Just look at your major support and resistance levels, draw your trend lines, and this template that we use here on our strategy template is primarily just to give us another confirmation, and that's what we're looking for as traders. The more confirmation, the more the likelihood price is going to be doing exactly what it is that we wanted to do. Other than that, hope you have a fantastic trading day, and I'll see you first thing tomorrow morning. Until then, trade serenely.